IAI mengabdi, bersatu dan berbakti untuk Ibu Pertiwi, selalu berkarya dan jaga integritas Ikatan Akuntan Indonesia. Langkahmu, gerakmu, hadirkan semangatmu, hatimu dan mimpimu, satukanlah dalam asamu. Tunjukkan baktimu, kuatkan imanmu, raihlah prestasimu. Satukan tujuan, siapkan masa depan, jaga akuntabilitas. IAI mengabdi, bersatu dan berbakti untuk Ibu Pertiwi, selalu berkarya dan jaga integritas Ikatan Akuntan Indonesia. Ikatan Akuntan Indonesia.
My name is Yoga Prawita, currently an Associate Director at EY Jakarta, qualified in London, UK, been a member of ACCA for 2 years. Being an ACCA member means that I'm part of the global network that ACCA has got. And also ACCA gives you credibility as a finance professional to work globally and locally. ACCA certainly has given me lots of opportunities and has helped me a lot early in my career. You need to make sure you spend time in the morning to have breakfast with your wife and also the kids. To me, it's very important. And also at night, make sure get home timely, spend a bit more time and continue work from home. Working in one of the big fours gives you some degree of flexibility, which I appreciate, while you're managing your commitment as a husband and dad, and also managing your responsibility at work.
My name is Lasma Pujiati Saradistio. I currently work at Pasar Jaya as finance and accounting head. Being an ACCA member, I'm more confident in making decisions on a daily basis. I minimize the risk and maximize the result. There's a lot of job opportunities open for me. They give me higher salary, higher benefit, higher take-home pay, higher position. The best thing about my job, I can contribute more from my hands, from my thinking, from the teamwork here, because we try to contribute to make 8 million people life better than yesterday.
The challenge for professional accountants in the 5 to 10 years is basically the competitions with artificial intelligence. You might already aware that computers, AI, are capable of taking over any works that are being done repetitively. And we understand in accounting fields, there are a lot of works we do are actually repetitive works. Those will be taken over by AI. In essence, you have to be expert in exploiting your minds to analyze, to make decisions, and to solve problems. Only by having that, you can survive. Now, with all those challenges that you are facing, the question is now, what ACCA can do for you? Now, let me say this. If you are a member of ACCA, you can take advantage of the comprehensive knowledge and the full resources, expertise that they have. They have all the technologies that are needed in helping us to face our challenges.
Good afternoon and welcome to the grand launching of co-branding ACCA and IAI on certificate in data analytics. In this lovely afternoon, I would like to greet IAI Council member Bapak Isnaini Ahdiat, ACCA Executive Director Finance and Operation Mr. Raymond Jack, IAI Executive Director Ibu Elizarni Husin, Head of ACCA Indonesia Ibu Hani Karunia, IAI Director of Membership and Partnership Service, Bapak Edward Tanujaya. Our speaker, Mr. Suresh Sod, Data Scientist, Chartered Accountants Australia and New Zealand, ACCA Business Relationship Manager, Badames Nurcheni. Ladies and gentlemen, the participant of this webinar, welcome. To open the grand launching of this co-branding certification between IAI and ACCA, I would like to humbly invite IAI Council member Bapak Isnaini Ahdiat to deliver the welcoming remarks. To Bapak Isnaini Ahdiat, the floor is yours, Pak.
Thank you, Monica. Good afternoon, everyone. Honorable Mr. Raymond Jack, Executive Director in Finance and Operation ACCA, Mr. Suraj Sood, Data Scientist, Chartered Accountants, Australia and New Zealand, Ms. Elizarni Hussein, Executive Director EAI, Ms. Hani Karunia, Head of ACCA Indonesia, Mr. Edward Anujaya, Director of Membership and Partnership Service EAI, Ms. Dems Nursuni, Business Relationship Manager ACCA, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon again, and I wish you in very good health. Praise be to God Almighty for His grace in allowing us the privilege and opportunity to be here today for this joint virtual sessions, the grand launching of the co-branding ACCA-IAI on the CertDA. On behalf of IAI, I would like to welcome you to today's joint session. IAI responds to demand and challenges for developing an understanding of data analytics and data modeling by partnering with ACCA to offer a global standard certifications, ACCA's Certificate in Data Analytics, CertDA Analytics. IAI encourages related parties to improve their qualifications through these certifications, while encouraging all parties to also follow IAI certifications, especially the professional accountant certifications, chartered accountant. Ladies and gentlemen, the use of analytics by finance team is not new. As computerization has developed, so to have the tools available to capture, refine, and interpret data. Technology-savvy organizations can benefit from analytics and augmented intelligence across all disciplines by using an infusion strategy. Used the right way, data and augmented intelligence can create competitive advantage, re-engineer processes, and enhance risk controls. Today's accountants must deal with the complexity of big data, how to analyze big data, and how to use big data to gain a much greater benefits. The skills needed to support analytics are combinations of technical and behavioral skills. The increased availability of data and analytic tools have been opened a range of opportunities for accountant and finance professionals, including auditors. As a preventive response, IAI, as the largest accounting professional organization in Indonesia, has included this digital technology development initiative in Initiative 6.1 as the IAI Strategic Program. Together with ACCA, we shared a commitment to enhance the quality of professional accountants in Indonesia and their role in contributing to the economy. IAI and ACCA have agreed on a strategic pathway to strengthen global recognitions of Indonesian professional qualifications. In August 2009, we signed a memorandum of understanding with ACCA, which was then followed by a strategic partnership agreement in June 2014. This SPA was extended in April 2019, further highlighting both organizations' positive cooperations and successful collaborations for the professions. Both organizations are fully committed to ensuring the contributions of accountants in encouraging the post-COVID-19 economic revival, as well as strengthening the role of accountants in the digital economy in the future. As part of our Initiative 6.1, IAI Strategic Program, IAI as an agent of trust will always be at the forefront of efforts to create good governance and build trust in the Indonesian economy. This step is increasingly urgent after the pandemic and in the digital economy era. The accountancy profession plays a strategic role as an advisor, as well as leader in dealing with various strategic issues in both the corporate and public sectors. Accountants therefore need to maintain their competencies. Once again, I welcome you to the grand launching of the co-branding ACCA-IAI on the CertDA. May God Almighty bless us all Stay healthy and keep up the spirit. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Isnaini Ahdiat, for your remarks. Now I would like to invite Mr. Raymond Jack, Mr. Suresh, Ibu Eli, Pak Edward, Ibu Hani, Mbak Dames, Jills, to open your camera because we would like to have a photo session. So if you could please open your camera, our team will do the screenshot, because this is our way to have a group picture right now. Are you ready all? Everybody is opening the camera. Okay. Now I'll count to 3. Okay. 1, 2, and 3. One more time. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, thank you very much. Now moving on to the next agenda. Let us hear the remarks from the Executive Director in Finance and Operation ACCA, Mr. Raymond Jack. Mr. Jack, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much indeed, and welcome everyone to the webinar. I'd like to start by thanking very much Pak Isnaini Ahdiat, an Indonesian Chartered Accountants Council member. Thank you very much indeed. I'd also like to thank those of you joining today's webinar, including ACCA members, those from the Institute of Indonesian Chartered Accountants, and Chartered Accountants Australia and New Zealand, and other key Indonesian stakeholders. I also want to thank our key strategic partner in the market, the Institute of Indonesian Chartered Accountants, and their leadership team for helping organise today's event. Thank you very much indeed. Lastly, I'd like to thank Suresh Sood from our key partner, Chartered Accountants Australia and New Zealand, for his insightful session later on. I have some thoughts I'd like to share with you based on the report, the current global pandemic, and my role as Executive Director at ACCA for Finance and Operations. COVID-19 has cast a new light on priorities across the finance industry and had an immediate and fundamental effect on the value we attach to the role of accountants. This has led to an appreciation of the insights that accountants provide through financial metrics as an important component of supporting the financial survival of many organisations. It's clear that the critical importance of data has been magnified during the pandemic, with a focus on statistics of infection rates and the additional layers of data that sit under these top-line figures. As many of you will attest to, there is a need to provide your management team and business partners with real-time insights to enable them to make the best decisions possible. This is both a unique opportunity and a challenge for finance professionals that we represent. And through our recent report, Analytics in Finance and Accountancy, which we jointly produced with Chartered Accountants Australia and New Zealand, and was co-authored by Suresh Sood, there is a clear message that finance teams must leave their comfort zone and champion big data and forward-looking analytics to remain relevant. However, from our global survey of 1,150 accountancy professionals, there are clear indications that many were still reporting on past performance. The use of predictive and prescriptive analytics needs to be embraced to enhance and drive business efficiencies, risk management, planning, budgeting, and forecasting. And to effectively drive the business towards good decisions based on rich, multifaceted information, then accountancy and finance professionals need to ensure they are developing skills in the appropriate directions to provide their stakeholders with forward-looking insights. ACCA have updated their qualifications to reflect this and ensure members and future members can develop the right skills needed to understand and apply the insights data can offer. Our certificate in data analytics is a great example of this and a key aspect of our collaboration with the Institute of Indonesian Chartered Accountants. And more information on the certificate will be provided by my colleague from our Indonesian team. To conclude, the COVID pandemic has heightened the need for organizations to develop plans to cope with a range of scenarios and opportunities as they evolve. And I think that accountants and finance teams have a unique opportunity to support this by leading their organizations to make better decisions driven by insights from analysis of big data. I now hand you over to our Indonesian Business Relations Team Manager, Dams. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Raymond, for your remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, EIA together with ACCA are fully committed to further establishing the role of accountancy profession in Indonesia. We have so many programs together, and one of it is the co-branding between ACCA and IAI on certification in data analytics. To share you more about this initiative, we would like to kindly invite the Business Relationship Manager ACCA, Mbak Dames Nurcheni, to present about the program. To Mbak Dames, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mbak Monica. Saya boleh izin share screen. Please let me know kalau sudah terlihat ya, Mbak.
Sudah, Mbak, sudah terlihat.
Oke, awesome, thank you. Selamat sore Bapak dan Ibu semua. Terima kasih atas kesempatannya yang diberikan untuk saya, Dames Nurcheni, yang hari ini akan berbagi pemaparan terkait produk co-branding ACCA dan IAI, yaitu Certificate in Data Analytics, atau kami juga biasa singkat menjadi CertDA. Izinkan saya menyampaikan informasi ini dalam bahasa Indonesia. Sebelum saya menjelaskan lebih jauh tentang CertDA, izinkan saya untuk sedikit memperkenalkan ACCA terlebih dahulu. ACCA adalah Association of Chartered Certified Accountants. Kami adalah the world's most forward-thinking professional accountancy body yang didirikan di Inggris di tahun 1904. Kami percaya bahwa akuntansi adalah profesi yang sangat penting, dan itulah mengapa ACCA berkomitmen untuk selalu mengembangkan profesi akuntansi secara global. ACCA merupakan global body yang semakin bertambah besar setiap harinya, di mana saat ini ACCA sudah memiliki 227.000 members dan 544.000 students atau future members yang tersebar di 180 negara. Saat ini ACCA memiliki 110 kantor di 49 negara, yang salah satunya adalah Indonesia. Kantor perwakilan ACCA Indonesia mulai didirikan sejak tahun 2013. Lalu secara global saat ini ACCA sudah bekerja sama dengan lebih dari 7.600 approved employers. Artinya, mereka adalah perusahaan-perusahaan yang sudah menjadikan ACCA sebagai salah satu persyaratan untuk either recruitment process atau persyaratan untuk mendapatkan kenaikan jabatan atau bahkan secondment ke negara lain. Approved employers juga memberikan support untuk ACCA members dan future members yang ada di perusahaan mereka, baik dalam bentuk financial maupun pemberian paid leave untuk mereka belajar dan mengikuti ujian ACCA. Selain itu, kami juga bekerja sama dengan other professional bodies. Di Indonesia, kami bekerja sama dengan major national bodies, salah satunya adalah IAI, di mana kita secara rutin menyelenggarakan acara bersama IAI yang salah satunya adalah hari ini kami bangga sekali akhirnya kami berhasil mengadakan grand launching of co-branding ACCA-IAI on Certificate in Data Analytics. ACCA Certificate in Data Analytics penting bagi bisnis di era saat ini untuk dapat menggunakan data dalam membuat keputusan yang tepat, meningkatkan efisiensi, mengurangi biaya, dan menurunkan risiko. Data analytics menciptakan nilai yang dapat membantu memecahkan masalah bisnis yang kompleks, dan dengan pengolahan data yang tepat, maka hal tersebut akan menjadi salah satu faktor kesuksesan suatu bisnis. Saya akan coba menjelaskan benefit jika Bapak dan Ibu mengikuti CertDA. Yang pertama, dikarenakan CertDA ini disampaikan dalam bentuk online dan on demand, maka CertDA dapat dikerjakan menyesuaikan dengan kegiatan Bapak dan Ibu. Di ACCA, CertDA dihitung sejumlah 4 CPD hours. IAI sendiri menawarkan 2 CPD points untuk Bapak dan Ibu yang mengikuti program CertDA. Konten yang disampaikan dari CertDA ini dibawakan dengan interaktif dan menarik. Kemudian ketika Bapak dan Ibu menyelesaikan CertDA, maka akan mendapatkan recognition dari 2 professional bodies, yaitu dari IAI nationally dan juga dari ACCA globally. Bidang akuntansi dan keuangan mengalami pergeseran sebagai akibat dari kemajuan teknologi saat ini. Kita ditawarkan berbagai kemudahan untuk mengakses berbagai bentuk dan ukuran data yang tersedia untuk kita manfaatkan demi menghasilkan keputusan yang terbaik untuk di dalam suatu perusahaan. Data yang digunakan untuk mendapatkan pemahaman yang lebih dalam terkait company's result. Perkembangan dalam daya komputasi dan keterjangkauannya berarti metode yang kami gunakan untuk mengumpulkan, menyempurnakan, dan menafsirkan data juga terus dan selalu berkembang. Dengan lebih banyak akses ke berbagai dan jumlah informasi yang tersedia, termasuk peningkatan ketersediaan data dan sumber daya analitis, telah memberikan peluang besar untuk fitur keuangan khususnya. Individu dan organisasi akan mendapatkan keuntungan dari pengelolaan data dan pengembangan volume data yang besar menjadi model pengambilan keputusan yang lebih selaras secara strategis. CertDA ini ditujukan bagi bisnis profesional yang ingin meningkatkan pemahamannya atas data dan kemampuan juga teknik yang ada untuk mengolah data. Kemudian CertDA memasukkan contoh nyata practical business untuk mengembangkan pemahaman tentang data analytics dan data modeling. Kemudian participants akan mempelajari terkait big data, sumber data, tipe analytics, dan terpapar dengan berbagai alat dan teknik pengolahan data. Participants juga akan mempelajari tentang pentingnya menjadi skeptis dan ethical ketika mengerjakan suatu data. Key learning outcomes dari CertDA. Participants akan dapat menjelaskan bagaimana menggunakan commercial awareness untuk artikulasi business questions. Participants akan dapat mengidentifikasi, memanipulasi, dan menganalisa data secara dalam dengan mengaplikasikan teknik yang sesuai. Participants akan mampu menjelaskan bagaimana penemuan dari hasil analisa dapat dan harus divisualisasi dan dikomunikasikan, sehingga membantu stakeholders untuk membuat keputusan bisnis yang tepat. Kemudian participants juga akan mempelajari dan memahami ethical security issues around data analytics. Kemudian yang terakhir, participants akan dikenalkan dengan popular statistical and programming tools seperti SQL, R, and Python, juga pengenalan terhadap AI, artificial intelligence, dan machine learning. Berikut ini adalah course unit dari CertDA. Totalnya terdapat 10 unit. Antara lain adalah the CRISP, Framework for Data Analytics, di mana di sana mengcover tentang business understanding, data understanding, data preparation, data modeling, data evaluation, dan deployment. Kemudian akan ada pembahasan terkait big data dan data analytics. What is big data? the 3 V's of big data, volume, velocity, and variety. Kemudian the value and lessons to be learned from big data. Kemudian pembahasan juga terkait source of data, apakah internal dan eksternal, types of analytics, descriptive, predictive, prescriptive analytics, lalu ada data analytics methodologies, ada robotics, AI, and machine learning. Kemudian mainstream tools and key applications of data analytics, tools and application for descriptive analytics, for predictive analytics, and for prescriptive analytics. Kemudian ada data visualization and communication, ini yang sangat penting untuk bisa dikuasai, untuk bisa memvisualisasikan suatu data, di mana di sana membahas tentang what is data visualization, the purpose, the benefit, the history of data visualization, types of visualization, comparison, composition, relationship, what makes good visualization. Kemudian yang tidak kalah penting adalah skepticism in data analytics, kemudian ethical consideration in the use of data. Yang terakhir, di end of unit akan ada data analysis activity. Jadi di dalam CertDA ini memiliki assessment sebanyak 12 pertanyaan dengan totalnya 20 marks. Jadi totalnya 20 marks. Dan participants, Bapak dan Ibu yang mengikuti CertDA hanya perlu mencapai paling tidak minimal 10 marks dari assessment tersebut atau sebesar 50%. Maka sudah dinyatakan lulus dan akan mendapatkan Certificate of Data Analytics. Kemudian beberapa poin penting dari CertDA. CertDA menawarkan cost-effective online learning yang ditujukan untuk meningkatkan cara pengambilan keputusan komersial yang memberikan value untuk suatu organisasi dalam membantu tercapainya strategi, visi, dan misi. Kemudian CertDA mencakup topik yang sangat relevan dan very up-to-date. Lalu CertDA ini tidak tepat untuk mereka yang sudah pernah mengikuti Ethics and Professional Skills modul dari ACCA. Karena sedikit banyak CertDA di-cover di dalam ETFM online modulnya ACCA. Kemudian beberapa fitur penting dari CertDA. Course unitnya sebanyak 10 unit yang tadi saya sampaikan. Kemudian durasi pengerjaannya sekitar 4 jam dan dapat dilakukan dalam jangka waktu 6 bulan. Sesuai dengan periode akses nanti yang diterima. Jadi ketika Bapak Ibu sign up untuk mengikuti ujian CertDA, akan ada akses selama 6 bulan di mana Bapak Ibu bisa mengerjakan, bisa mempelajari 10 unit CertDA dan mengerjakan 12 assessment questions tadi. Sertifikat akan diberikan setelah partisipan menyelesaikan seluruh assessment-nya. Kemudian terkait biaya akan diinformasikan lebih lanjut oleh perwakilan dari IAI nanti di sesi berikutnya. Sekian pemaparan dari saya terkait CertDA. Semoga dapat memberikan gambaran yang cukup terkait CertDA dan ACCA. Kemudian jika Bapak dan Ibu ada pertanyaan lebih lanjut terkait ACCA, silakan hubungi kami di alamat email tertera info.indonesia@accaglobal.com. Untuk pertanyaan terkait CertDA dapat disampaikan mungkin nanti di dalam Q&A session. Terima kasih atas perhatiannya. Selanjutnya saya kembalikan kepada Mbak Monica. Thank you.
Thank you, Mbak Dames, for presenting the CertDA program. Ladies and gentlemen, moving forward to our next agenda is the presentation on the current topics of data analytics. But before that, let me just read a brief about housekeeping rules that apply on this webinar. So, ladies and gentlemen, this webinar, so the first one is the microphone is on mute. I believe you are on a mute position right now. And the video is on off position. I also believe that the camera is off right now. This webinar is recorded by IAI and we will be publish it on our social media. It's on a YouTube channel right now. So should you have a question, you could drop it on the Q&A function, or on the chat function. The material and the recording of this webinar will be published by IAI and you will be informed later. That's all. Once again, should you have any question regarding the material, you could go to the chat function or Q&A function. Ladies and gentlemen, this session will be delivered by data scientists, chartered accountants Australia and New Zealand, Mr. Suresh Sood. Let me read a brief CV of Mr. Suresh. Ladies and gentlemen, Suresh Sood is one of Australia's experts in the practical use of big data and machine learning, working in diverse fields from financial services to social media marketing. He not only served as a data scientist sharing time with early stage companies, but analyzes human experience developing award-winning algorithms. Suresh served as director of big behavioral data with brain value analyzing a variety of behavioral data, including eye tracking, facial expression, heart rate, and brain activity for artificial intelligence to improve business decision for professionals. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I will give the session to Mr. Suresh. Suresh, the floor is yours.
Thank you. It's so exciting. What a welcome. And little did the team that I was part of recognize the actual timing and importance of the timing of this report. We started sometime in November. We were clearly in some countries in lockdown and wrestling with COVID. But I'm here to tell you that the reception from many places across the globe was very exciting, and we got some tremendous feedback and opportunity to write up some case studies that I believe are highly relevant. Of course, we couldn't cover the whole world, so I would hope at some stage in the future, when we do some follow-on reports, we could certainly be talking to many of you and members. So our actual report is titled Analytics in Finance and Accountancy. It is intended for the finance function, but I have found that marketing teams actually are frankly wrestling with similar issues in some ways, but not with financial data as much. And many other professionals across organizations will find this a valuable report, and I see it pretty much a companion piece to the certificate. Again, we didn't recognize the timing once we started the research, but I'm here to tell you this could be a good read as you work through your cert, and for certainly many of your employees as well, for those of you that have reasonable sized practices. So look, we can't do this justice in 30 minutes or so, so I'm going to cover the highlights and the areas for our conversation. Pretty much I've listed here, but we basically look at the current state of affairs. So this is in the areas for conversation. And then we move on to, we did ask some hard questions and we did get some direction for the future. Now, as Raymond Jacks and others have shared with you some insights, I think you may find that we pretty much picked up those insights from our report as well and from interviews. So these are global interviews, and I'm going to touch on the key aspects of the report. But what I will say is when you can, it certainly is a useful educational read. So if we move on to the three reports of the finance function that ACCA has presented, you'll see that I've circled the report we're going to talk about, but there are certainly two other reports that provide a companionship. So if someone new is starting in your finance organization, or there's promotions taking place, or junior members coming in, I think this combination of three will provide some very valuable insights for your internal and outward-facing people. So down the bottom of this graphic, you'll notice we have on the left-hand side organizational purpose, and on the right-hand side decision-making. Something that we felt was very important fundamentally is this value chain, that we must align with the organizational purpose, strategy, and the data strategy itself must align with the business strategy. Our analytics must support decision-making. Now, the interesting aspect is that whenever I've certainly talked to a variety of professionals, both in Australia and New Zealand, as well as elsewhere in the world, we do have to think about what we mean by analytics. We're all very quick to jump onto the new generation of tools. And so it's important that we think about whether we're looking at process or the technology. Now, this is the forward from the actual report, and I've highlighted in red some key aspects. And again, Raymond earlier had actually talked about this. And so let me reiterate the findings of this report. And of course, clearly we were, because of COVID, using rare view looking analytics. So both the CEO of Chartered Accountants Australia and New Zealand and Helen Brand, Chief Executive of ACCA, have written this piece, and they are saying there's never been a greater need to invest in forward-looking analytics that helps decision makers explore a range of options for the future and match that to the current actions. In other words, we should be able to adapt ourselves, operate in an agile manner. If accountancy and financial professionals fail to develop our skills in this appropriate direction to provide stakeholders with forward-looking insights as much as what we've traditionally done in terms of rear view, we do run the risk of being marginalized. And what I mean by that is around the table of decision makers, you will often find data analysts, data scientists, and so forth. And not only is artificial intelligence and machine learning eating away at what we do, but essentially other professionals, I'm here to tell you, are happy to work with data and certainly encroach on our areas. So I think this is quite interesting. And if we move on to the CRISP-DM framework, essentially, what was interesting as I moved through the research interviews, there were key questions. How do we get started on analytics projects? How do we organize? What do we need to do to ensure that the analytics project being undertaken is ethical? How do we know we've achieved the actual completion of an analytics project? Because there's many parts to an analytics project. And interestingly, the answers to these questions weren't discussed by many organizations that we've spoken to. And in fact, what we did find is there were pockets of people that understood the CRISP-DM framework from working with data warehouses. This is not new, 1997, 1990s, and there's no reason why you can't use that framework. Also, I noticed in our introduction for the CertDA, there is a section on CRISP-DM as well. So this can be a little bit of an appetizer. So what's actually changed though? What is different? What is this big data? So look, I'm here to tell you it's not just about data that is too big to put in our laptop or have on a server or essentially be very large even to challenge cloud solutions. I think that is not as important as what we would term the variety of data. And there's going to be data inside and outside our organization. Here, let's look at the big source of the business sources of big data. This is the non-financial information, so we'll distinguish it from financial information. So you'll see that, for instance, in marketing, we have a vast amount of information, including website analytics. So just imagine for one moment, as we are working with our clients within our businesses, we have access to the feed from the website. If that feed is showing us there's lots of people making inquiries, then it should not be too much of a leap to say, hey, our business may well be going up in future. This, even though this is a correlation, it's probably a much tighter impact on our business the more people that come inquire. So I think it becomes so important to look at these non-financial information sources. In accounts receivable, the full textual description of the goods or services purchased represent a source of big data. I was called into New South Wales government a while ago where we found the size of the data just from the descriptions was creating massive problems. However, we need to keep that because those descriptions can be mined for information. We can use that information that's held in text in our invoices, in our accounts receivables, purchases, and so forth, to actually give us some form of predictive element to our forward-looking models. Purchasing and sale of items, clearly there's GPS. Whenever we have truck deliveries, we certainly have drivers that will have phones. We can include time of delivery, GPS. Again, we can manufacture or utilize this data as much as we wish. And then, of course, there's mobile payments, email, inventory, and even the use of drones to look for inventory that may well have been lost or hidden in a very large open space or warehouse. So even the processing of these photos could be construed as big data, video, to help give us some capability beyond where we sit today to look forwards. So as an example, though, we may not always utilize our own sources of big data. There are other sources of big data outside our businesses. And here's two examples. For instance, not long time ago, an economist was able to predict the price of very good wine. And there was an actual equation developed. Yet many vineyards, many others had a vast amount of information that was their own. They kept to themselves. Yet this individual, Oleh, used information that's available everywhere, including rainfall data. On the right-hand side here is another interesting a set of non-financial information, and this is the ANZ truckometer. You can certainly look at this online, but the interesting thing of the ANZ truckometer is it measures the amount of traffic on various routes in New Zealand. And what we find is that the heavy traffic, heavy trucks, those routes which are used by the heavy trucks, moves along very similar to the economy. So, in fact, we don't learn too much more by looking at heavy traffic. But the light traffic, this is the movement of people. It could even include couriers taking documents into a city and so forth. This lightweight movement actually gives us a 6-month lead on the activity in the economy, the GDP. And in fact, that little graphic there shows two charts. So one's heavy traffic, one's light traffic. Of course, during COVID, we did see some of these indicators break down, but if you look at the commentary that's available, these indicators are moving in a nice way. So this is outside information, essentially, that can be looked at, and we found similar parallels across the world, other businesses looking outside. The New Zealand Truckometer was also selected because our organisations contacted in New Zealand were quite familiar with this, essentially. So let's look at now business intelligence itself, which is a little bit like analytics. We tend to work with analytics tools. We set aside the process. We often don't think about the process. But on this next slide, you will see that we are showing what the process of business intelligence potentially looks like. And this is familiar to most people we've spoken to, but the additions on this graphic are, firstly, that in yellow, the tools are moving much beyond what we call business intelligence. We can ask questions in plain English of these tools. We can do that of Google Sheets. We can do that of Microsoft Power BI. We can automatically generate a text-based story. So looking at data, a story can be automatically generated, and this can be quite useful for the repetitive work that was talked about in the opening. So repetitive work where we're doing reporting on a regular basis, if it's not too much textual information, we can readily generate that automatically. And in fact, it can be converted to speech and read out to our sales team professionals as they get to work on a Monday morning or whenever time you wish to have the reporting information provided. And the reason for doing that is there may be something in talking people through the data that people recognize a call for action rather than just looking at figures on a sheet. Automatic models will be generated in due course, and we can drive workflow from the reporting data itself. So if a certain metric gets to a certain level, we can then drive a certain kind of workflow. For instance, if customer inquiries are moving upwards, we can automate the workflow to call in some additional workers into our call center. On the left-hand side, I've listed a number of tools, but there are names here that you will not potentially be familiar with. And that's because we have now pretty much embedded into our workplace some range of tools, whether it be Excel, Microsoft Power BI, Google Sheets, Tableau, but there are a range of other tools. And for organizations that feel they need to explore something today, the world of open source is actually available. And many companies across the world contribute to these open source environments. So you now have, certainly as of this month, April, when I did this listing, quite a wide range of tools to choose from. Aligning with our choice of tools, though, and aligning with our essential business purpose, we must sit alongside the data strategy. And again, there wasn't a standard that we found. So we did use this piece of work from a past Harvard Business Review paper on data strategy. And this simply gave us the opportunity to talk to others about their strategy. So down the bottom there on the right-hand side, we have retail, essentially. And in retailing, there's perhaps less of a focus on regulation. Some retailers don't have much personal data, if any. And so in this kind of environment, you can react rapidly to competition. And this is what we call an offensive attacking data strategy. On the other hand, hospitals and banks tend to practice a much more defensive strategy for much of their business. But I think it's good to break out and understand the type of data strategy that is supporting the business in its decision making. We already touched upon on our next slide the 4 V's of big data, but let me just remind us. So in what I said at the beginning of this conversation, it is the variety of data that matters so much. It can be earthquake data. Increasingly, we are accessing satellite data. It can be data from traffic, road traffic, tourism, and so forth. This, I believe, is the real revolution that we call big data. Yes, we need to support and have the systems to support the volume. Yes, we recognize this data is frequently changing. And yes, it is often in error, and sometimes we have to take into account the errors in the data passing through our systems. But what has changed, without a doubt, is the variety of data that's available. And that I think everyone has certainly agreed with, but it's what we do with that data and how we use it to support decision making that starts to become important now and post-COVID. So let's look at the opportunities for analytics. And this is straight out of our essential report. And what I'm pleased to tell you is across the globe, the recognition was that analytics is about faster and better decision making. And I would be open to tell you that I would be worried if that wasn't at the top of the list, because then the problem of where we are, where we need to move to, would be such a big gap. So the recognition is there. It's there to support our executive decision making at all levels of a business. There is better planning and forecasting is an expectation. But I think if we couple faster and better decision making with real-time insights into performance, those two far outweigh the rest of the charts. Again, as you review the report yourself, you may well find that some of the opportunities for using analytics are much lower than what you would expect or what you have in your own organization. And certainly you need to reconcile that, but it is a useful benchmark here that we have. Now, one of the aspects of working through this global research, well, we did have organizations that were SME. And so while some of the problems are similar for them, the scale and scope of what an SME can do is very far different, and the agility with which an SME can move. And what we found, certainly from UK, Australia, New Zealand, and other pockets, is there is a consistent list of applications that certainly the consultants expressed to us. You can pick up the names of the type of consultants we also spoke to in the back of this report that has now been published. So there are tools there to pull in information from accounts into Excel. There are tools there that seem to be quite popular amongst SMEs that allow you to make predictions about a business, automated 2-year forecasts, financial reporting and analysis. So I think the difference that we found with the SMEs as opposed to larger enterprises is they have solutions that can be pretty much taken out of the box and they can be run up. very easily, as long as you have some resource. A data analyst can be a junior data analyst, but someone effectively in your team that can look after these tools. Now, the case study that I wanted to share with you, so not only did we look at conversations, we were fortunate to have case studies. Certainly one not very far from where I'm sitting today is actually teachers' health insurance. And there's quite a long case study that's been published in the report that you can review. And they started off business in the 1950s, and insurance, of course, is a challenge. But again, you can look at what the finance perspective was on transforming the business. But we mustn't forget there are some very, very basic problems. And we've spoken to more than one organization who basically still has challenges with master data. This one was fascinating. Obviously, one of our challenges is having good data to work with. This is a problem of discipline. And this is one of the issues in that we have with master data. For years, we have been exerting pressure on the top management to make sure this problem is resolved. We have good infrastructure. We invest a lot of money. We train people. But when it comes to managing our master data, this is one of our biggest issues. We know we've got a problem in sales and marketing. They're late with the master data, or they provide the wrong master data, and they outsource the process. So it becomes even more of a mess. So you need to explain that if we want to have good decision-making, this needs robust analytics, and that requires good quality data. Otherwise, your analyses become false. And I think this is a good reminder that says, don't go out and rush out and get the next shiny tool. Excel, Power BI, and others can certainly do a reasonable job. But we need to take care of the house. If our data is not fully understood, then we have challenges and we will waste an awful lot of time in reconciling that data. So we did ask the question, why do finance teams use analytics? Interestingly, decision-making was not mentioned, and potentially because we had already had that discussion, I suspect many of these organizations and members consulted recognized they wanted to drill deeper. So at one end, it was the identification of talent and managing the talent process. At the other end of the spectrum was to have business efficiencies and therefore effectively make the business much more flexible as we move forward. So these are some of the key areas, but what I do want to think about, or have us think about, beyond the uses and the opportunities, is what are the different types of analytics that we come across. And this will help us understand the feedback we got from the organizations we spoke to. So I think there's nothing like having a standard approach as given on the next slide. So these four types of analytics that we can consider are descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive. So descriptive is what we normally tend to do. It's the actual reporting type of work. It's what has happened. But we can go further than that. We can go, what's happened and why did it happen? But I think the real opportunity for us, which actually can help make us more entrepreneurial, is predictive analytics. And then beyond that, even a recommendation of what needs to be done so the human spends a minimum of time thinking about it. Now, I don't think you'll be surprised, but really in magnitude and during COVID and even prior to that, descriptive, just describing what has happened, continues to lead the way. Diagnostic, what's happened and why, is next, but very few organizations are spending effort on predictive analytics. That is, what does the future hold? Can you tell me what might be happening in the next period, or 2 periods away, or 2 years away? And prescriptive analytics, where the actual recommendation is actually made for us and a suggestion made on the course of action that should be taken. So we see very little on the prescriptive side, some emergence on the predictive, but I'm here to tell you, no one was able to pull out, and this is not about putting any one organization on the spot, but no one was able to show from a research interview perspective reports that were of a predictive nature. Forecasting, yes, but predictive, no. And there is a big difference between the two. But as I've said in the past, we did see organizations can access their web analytics data, and there is no reason why that shouldn't already be flowing through to the finance teams to provide some kind of indication of where the business is going, whether it be through inquiries or whether it be through the number of people landing on your website. This can be put up on a big screen. Marketing teams typically have all these data and dashboards on a large television-like screen in their work areas. So that keeps the pulse going. And my final word on predictive is, because we're looking ahead of time, it does make us much more entrepreneurial in terms of thinking about the future and how can we make that happen? How can what we're seeing on the screen here, how can we make it happen? And that creates a much more agile organization as well, essentially. The challenges that we had are plenty of them. And this is the order. I don't know whether you'll agree, but at the top was, there was a feeling there was a lack of knowledge around existing technologies and solutions. Of course, we all potentially have some form of a spreadsheet. So I guess in that respect, we do know about some technologies. We all have also some form of, in some cases, complex financial systems. Data in poor formats was seen as an issue. Access to the right skills for analyzing data, no central data strategy, there were legal issues, and integration of new technologies to the existing landscape. These are challenges I'm sure you're familiar with, but it will be good to look at this and circle where you might be sitting or which challenges are essentially key. And from the next slide, it shouldn't be a challenge to recognize that we're all using Excel. We're still using Excel. But I will say again, when individuals or organizations brought forward their Excel, and by the way, this is one of the recommendations, there are some very detailed recommendations in this report, was that the decision-making process is often, in fact, 99% of the time, does not appear with the Excel spreadsheet. So I think it's a good idea as a practice to start today and actually even have a worksheet there for anyone who's using Excel or that particular information to indicate how it's likely to be used in decision-making. Data visualization, so there has been a move to a new set of tools, including the Tableau type and the Microsoft Power BI. And as I've shown you, there's more coming. Data aggregation tools, very few organizations, but I will say accountancy practices, some of the larger organizations did talk about Alteryx, and that was the key data aggregation tool. So again, we do mention, because it was available from the research, the particular tools, products, vendors that were being used during this cycle of this research. And then at the other end, we've got artificial intelligence, machine learning coming into view as well. One of the things that we think is ideal, and again, questions asked, was how do we develop the business case for analytics in finance? And this almost was a question which wasn't fully explained, but what came out was that the finance teams do actually help other members across a large or medium organization with putting the business case together. But the business case for analytics in finance should be the model business case. So if someone from another department or elsewhere is asking for the business case, then certainly any case that you've used should be a good case. In developing the business case, we found it was actually quite messy. Some people had a 100-point spreadsheet that needed to be completed. Others had pro formas very thick. Some were very agile during COVID and just a few pages. And some said, because we don't have a significant expenditure on analytics, we'll just green light. If a business case looks okay, we'll let it go through. But what we have picked up are there's 4 areas. The objectives of the organization need to come into play, and how we're monitoring and using the analytics to monitor, if you like, the 3 Ps, the purpose and so forth. How is analytics going to address the enhanced decision-making processes? And we don't have to wait for the new tools, new processes in analytics. We can take our spreadsheet today, but specify and codify the decision-making processes to give a clearer view of the factors that play a part in those decisions. And all of this has implications on a potential data model and the data that needs collecting. And again, this has come from the variety of organizations we've spoken to: retail, electricity utilities, government, and so forth. And finally, 4th on the list is the software and technology platform. So the use of, in some cases, maybe cloud-based technologies, in other cases, it may be on-premises, but the use of these tools that go beyond Excel. So what we need to consider is that the skills for analytics in finance and accountancy on the next slide includes quite a wide spectrum. So it is often difficult to get the people you wish in a timely manner. We need them to have knowledge of our environments. We need them to have a business understanding, data literacy, ability to extract data, visualize, and actually tell the story of what the data is saying. And the one that's kind of in the middle of this graphic is application knowledge. And to be clear here, what we found is that many organizations have potentially overlooked the advances in artificial intelligence and so on going on in their existing applications. And often, one organization I spoke to said, certainly in Eastern Europe, that the support people of a major vendor were fighting fires such that they could not tell them the major advantages of the new versions of software. And I think this becomes very important. Given we've made these investments, if we can help our own existing personnel get a leg up on new versions of the software that are using AI, that are using machine learning, then we would actually contain pretty much the costs, and we will probably minimize some degree of churn among skilled staff. And so that's just some insight I wanted to share, given the conversations we've had. Something closer to my environment here directly in Australia, on the next slide, is the fact that over the last few years, courses have been run, but very few in what we will call big data accountancy or big data finance. This is a particular course that was developed in conjunction with the university. It teaches students in a new set of skills, enabling them to extract big data from reports. They are able to analyze non-financial large data sets, and there is a development of predictive data analytics skills through hands-on work. But I think this whole process of sourcing data, analyzing, forming predictive is actually quite well covered in the CertDA, at least from a starting perspective. But this is what we've certainly come up with, and there is strong interest in having this style of education more pervasive. So in terms of the skills, in terms of the new kind of courses, in our own organizations, we need to support this analytics. And I've covered on the next slide the type of organizations that support analytics, or rather the organizational form. And that's hub and spoke, consulting, center of excellence, centralized, decentralized. Obviously, some of this depends on the systems. This information has been sourced from the people that we interviewed and we kept track of, the organizational model. A particular organizational model may be more appropriate for you. Functional is often used, and often functional analysts do have a dual reporting also into finance, where they find a home and can discuss key aspects of analytics and data within the organization. But it doesn't mean every organization is functional. Consulting works fine. There are a number of the organizations we spoke to who use external third parties to help build the models and then have them used at work. But another organization actually cautioned against that because they felt they weren't giving their own people the chance. So I think maybe a middle of the road hybrid model there of using external parties to help bootstrap or educate our teams is a good way to go. But finally, I do want to remind us, just before the final slide, on our next slide, that we think of artificial intelligence as something yet to happen. But what you will find is, and if you pick Microsoft Power BI, for instance, and let's pick something like Google Sheets, artificial intelligence is already built into these tools. Or there's a subset, machine learning, which is not quite the same as artificial intelligence, but can help us with prediction. Now, what we find in the two tools I've mentioned, and I just use them as an example, if you have sufficient knowledge, you can find in Microsoft Power BI, quick insights will actually find the patterns in the data. It will actually show us patterns that are worth investigating. Many of the organizations spoken to were not aware of this style of capability. In Google Sheets, you can effectively use a function called Explore, and then you can query your data in plain English, as well as it will provide patterns in the data. But very importantly, it will give you the macros of the patterns in the data, so you don't need to program for them. So this is a very exciting time we're in. Many vendors are not telling us what exactly is there because things are moving so fast and capabilities. So I do suggest, like many of the organizations we spoke to, it is well worth having a look at what you already have. But in finishing, the 5 areas of focus on our next slide that we've come up with, and you will find a number of suggestions behind these, are the following. So in moving forward, governance and data management matters. It still matters in 2021. Big data is just real. It's happening. So there is no discussion, but just remind ourselves that it's likely the variety of data, because quite often in feedback from those interviewed, it still comes back to big data as being big, but not necessarily the variety. Hybridization of talent means that we need a combination of people that understand our business and practices, that are also skilled in analytics. It sometimes takes too long to grow those in-house, but whatever path you take, we have come up with a number of suggestions that came from the member organizations we've spoken to and organizations globally. Decision-making enablement. So if we are going to use analytics for decisions, let's help enable those decisions by specifying the process effectively. And that goes back to, if you've got a spreadsheet, specify the process. And then finally, predictive and prescriptive analytics. There is more and more tools becoming available. You can experiment with them rather than put them into production, and you can use open source tools. And this has certainly been picked up by some of the accountancy people, executives we've met that are now running their own businesses, actually offering some advanced analytics services. So this is about all I have to say at this stage, but I hope the pace was fine, and I hope this has given you some food for thought together with CertDA. Thanks very much for taking the time.
Thank you, Mr. Suresh, for your presentation. It's very insightful for us to join the CertDA certification. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to ask you to join our survey. The link is provided on the chat function. The survey is also served as an attendance list, and the requirement to get the e-certificate. So we would like to ask you to answer the right keyword to get the e-certificate. The keyword is data analytics. One more time, the keyword is data analytics, okay? The link is provided on the chat function. You may revisit the link at the latest at 6 p.m. Jakarta time, okay? At the latest is 6 p.m. Jakarta time. With the right answer, data analytics. Ladies and gentlemen, our next session is the presentation about CertDA course that will prepare you to be ready to take the examination. This presentation will be delivered by IAI Director of Membership and Partnership Service, Bapak Edward Tanujaya. To Bapak Edward, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Monica. So allow me to share my screen first. Okay, can you see it? Okay, hopefully you can see the slides now.
Yes.
So Bapak Ibu and Mr. Suresh Sud, please allow me to use Bahasa Indonesia for my short presentations about IAI and the programs that we have with ACCA today. Mungkin saya skip aja sekilas mengenai IAI ini. Sebagaimana Bapak Ibu ketahui, IAI adalah organisasi profesional yang menaungi akuntan seluruh Indonesia dan sudah berdiri sejak tahun 1957, dan di bawah IAI bergabung akuntan sektor publik, akuntan berpraktik KJA, akuntan pajak, akuntan syariah maupun akuntan pendidik. Dan IAI memiliki 34 perwakilan wilayah di seluruh provinsi di Indonesia, sekaligus juga aktif di regional maupun internasional sebagai anggota IFAC, International Federation of Accountants, AFA, Association Federation of Accountants, dan CAW atau Chartered Accountants Worldwide. Dan memang dari awal pendirian sejak tanggal 23 Desember 1997, IAI memang diinisiasikan oleh para founding fathers IAI agar memiliki tujuan untuk berfokus pada perkembangan akuntansi, mutu pekerjaan akuntansi, dan tentunya ini tidak terlepas dari dunia pendidikan yang menghasilkan para calon akuntan profesional. Oleh karena itu sangat wajar jika memang IAI memiliki concern secara khusus terhadap pendidikan, baik itu formal akademik ataupun pendidikan profesional. Dan Bapak Ibu, peran IAI ini cukup luas ya, peran tanggung jawab IAI boleh dibilang dari hulu ke hilir, mulai dari sejak Bapak Ibu mendaftarkan diri sebagai anggota IAI, kemudian bagaimana mengembangkan minat, potensi, kualifikasi, serta kompetensi, karena IAI juga menyelenggarakan PPL, kemudian berkontribusi dalam bentuk penyelenggaraan sertifikasi akuntan profesional maupun sertifikasi yang bersifat khusus, dan penerapan kode etik akuntan profesional untuk menjamin sekali lagi tanggung jawab profesi akuntan kepada masyarakat. Dan mungkin IAI lebih dikenal juga, cukup sangat dikenal dalam kontribusi terkait dengan penyusunan laporan penyusunan standar akuntansi keuangan, dan tentunya ini menjadi kontribusi organisasi maupun profesi kita terhadap upaya untuk memperkuat dan meningkatkan ya transparansi, akuntabilitas maupun tata kelola laporan keuangan di Indonesia. Dan mungkin Bapak Ibu, saya ingin men-sharing bahwa jika selama ini kita ketahui buku SHK ini cukup tebal dan berat, tidak hanya berat secara isi, tapi juga berat secara fisik, karena 4 kg Bapak Ibu beratnya. Namun sekarang SHK juga bisa diakses secara online, baik menggunakan mobile atau gadget, ya, dengan silakan download aplikasinya di Google Play maupun App Store bagi yang menggunakan iPhone, dan juga bisa mengakses menggunakan komputer desktop ya dengan website shk.iaiglobal.org.id. Fasilitas SHK online ini fasilitasnya gratis ya untuk anggota aktif IAI. Namun bagi Bapak Ibu yang tidak berkesempatan menjadi anggota IAI dapat mengakses SHK online ini secara terpisah, dan itu ada kontribusi yang harus dibayarkan. Nah, SHK ini terdiri apa aja? Ada tiga tier yang aktif sekarang, yaitu SHK konvensional yang berbasis IFRS, ya, diadopsi dari IFRS, tentu ada sedikit perbedaan dari IFRS yang ada. IFRS adalah International Financial Reporting Standard. Kemudian ada SHK etap bagi entitas atau perusahaan tidak memiliki akuntabilitas publik. Ya, jadi kalau SHK yang konvensional, SHK besar atau yang berbasis IFRS ini diadopsi oleh perusahaan TBK, perusahaan terbuka atau perusahaan-perusahaan yang mendapatkan pendanaan atau permodalan dari publik ya. SHK etap bagi yang tidak ada akuntabilitas publik atau non akuntabilitas publik. SHK MKM jelas untuk perusahaan atau usaha mikro, kecil dan menengah. Nah, saat ini IAI sedang berproses untuk menyusun SAKI atau SHK internasional yang merupakan 100% adopsi dari IFRS. Sementara bagi entitas yang berbasiskan syariah, tentu sudah ada IAI juga menerbitkan SHK syariah yang menyusun transaksi yang berlandaskan pada hukum Islam. Nah, terkait dengan peran untuk memastikan agar kompetensi tetap berkembang ya, bagi anggota profesional, IAI juga menyiapkan sertifikasi tertentu. Nah, sertifikasi yang utama adalah CA, Chartered Accountant Indonesia, karena dengan memiliki CA Indonesia ini ada beberapa benefit yang bisa dimiliki. Yang pertama jelas dapat terdaftar sebagai register negara akuntan pada Kementerian Keuangan, dan juga nantinya bisa mendaftarkan diri menjadi anggota berpraktik atau AB yang dapat memperoleh izin pembukaan kantor jasa akuntan atau ACCA. Nah, untuk memiliki CA Indonesia ada 2 level ujian, yaitu foundation level atau professional level. Foundation level dikenal sebagai CAFB atau Certificate in Accounting, Finance and Business. Sementara bagi mereka yang sudah S1-nya akuntansi dapat langsung menggunakan atau langsung mengambil ujian pada level profesional. Dan 7 mata ujian level CAI ini harus diselesaikan dalam waktu 3 tahun. Bapak Ibu ya, 3 tahun menyelesaikan CA ujian ini. Dan jika Bapak Ibu telah memiliki pengalaman profesional selama 3 tahun, Bapak Ibu dapat langsung menyandang sebutan Chartered Accountant Indonesia. Dan tentunya ada hal dan kewajiban nantinya dari Chartered Accountant Indonesia, karena pemegang CA lah yang dapat menjadi anggota utama IAI. Sementara terkait dengan sertifikasi yang sifat khusus, kami IAI juga menyelenggarakan ujian seperti USCAT, USPSAK, USAP untuk hal bagi yang ingin berkecimpung secara pemerintahan, maupun USAS, sertifikasi akuntan syariah. Dan informasi lebih lanjut mengenai kegiatan IAI, Bapak Ibu dapat lihat pada katalog IAI yang dapat di-download secara cuma-cuma pada website IAI. Dan tentunya sebagai organisasi berlatar belakang ya sejak awal ya, kita memiliki IAI berperan dalam regional maupun internasional. IAI juga menjadi kerjasama dengan organisasi akuntan internasional, melakukan MRA atau Mutual Recognition Agreement, salah satunya dengan ACCA, di mana foundation level ACCA dan foundation level IAI ini sudah dianggap setara, sehingga bagi pemegang CA Indonesia yang ingin mengambil ACCA certifications dapat langsung lanjut mengambil ya pada level profesional. Nah, dengan ACCA secara khusus sebagaimana disampaikan oleh Bapak Isnani Agdiat dalam sambutannya, memang kami secara khusus berkolaborasi dalam melakukan co-branding untuk Certificate of Data Analytics atau CertDA ini di Indonesia, di mana tidak hanya examination atau ujiannya, tapi juga dibundling dengan course atau preparation course untuk menyiapkan agar Bapak Ibu dapat lebih mantap lagi untuk mengambil ujian CertDA ini. Dan mungkin di sekelas oleh Mr. Suresud juga sudah disampaikan mengenai apa data-data isu-isu terkait dengan data analytics, dan ada big data, ada type of analytics, dan tentunya kita harus memaham bahwa penggunaan data ini tidak akan menjadi sia-sia jika kita tidak memahami ethics penggunaan data maupun familiarity dengan serangkaian tools atau teknik untuk mengolah data tersebut. Dan tentunya ujian ini diharapkan mampu membuat para pemegangnya untuk dapat memanfaatkan manajemen data terkait dengan terutama terkait dengan dunia akuntansi dan keuangan gitu ya, sehingga dapat dimanfaatkan untuk proses pengambilan keputusan yang lebih strategis. Tentu sebagian disampaikan oleh Mbak Dames tadi mengenai fleksibilitas yang ditawarkan hingga Bapak Ibu tetap bisa menyeimbangkan antara belajar, bekerja ya ketika mengambil sertifikasi ini, juga efektif, cost efektif atau biayanya juga tidak terlalu mahal, dan seluruh pelaksanaan ini dilakukan secara online ya. Pos IAI juga menyelenggarakan secara online, ujian juga dilakukan secara online. Dan tentunya sertifikat ini diakui secara global, dan IAI juga memberikan sertifikat bagi Bapak Ibu yang telah menuntaskan course-nya, sehingga ada dual recognition di sini. Dan memang apa sih course yang ditawarkan oleh IAI, kursus preparation ini bundling sudah dengan CertDA exam itu sendiri, sehingga bukan Bapak Ibu sudah register dengan CertDA course and program co-branding ini, Bapak Ibu otomatis juga akan terregister untuk mengikuti ujiannya. Jadi nanti prosesnya ada satu pintu. Kemudian kelas dilakukan secara online dan secara interaktif, dengan kita akan dalam kelas preparation ini akan fokus pada key topics yang diujikan di dalam CertDA. Tentu ada kesempatan bagi para peserta course untuk melakukan praktis ya maupun mock exam ya, sehingga persiapan ini bisa lebih mantap lagi. Bapak Ibu bisa berdiskusi dengan para instruktur kami yang sudah berpengalaman, bahkan sudah lulus ya dalam pengambilan CertDA ini, sehingga mereka bisa sharing mengenai pengalaman ini. Tentunya ketika Bapak Ibu menyelesaikan course-nya, ada sertifikat dengan pengakuan SKP dari IAI. Nanti kalau udah lulus ujiannya tentu akan dapat sertifikat dari ACCA. Nah, ini 10 topik yang sudah dijelaskan oleh Ibu Badames dan beberapa isu penting tadi sudah dijelaskan, has been explained well with Mr. Sureshut. So mungkin saya skip bagian ini, dan batch pertama untuk co-branding CertDA ACCA CertDA course and exam ini kita mulai pada tanggal 3 Juni. Jadi kursnya kita desain tiap hari Selasa dan Kamis, ya, pukul 6.30 sampai 9.30 PM, after office Bapak Ibu, jadi bisa lebih optimal. Ini diselenggarakan beberapa dalam periode 2 kali seminggu, 2 kali pertemuan ya dalam 1 minggu, dan akan berakhir kelasnya pada tanggal 22 Juni. Nah, setelah itu Bapak Ibu bisa mulai mempersiapkan diri untuk mengambil ujiannya. Nah, flyer atau brosur mengenai ini dapat Bapak Ibu lihat sebenarnya di website IAI, namun di sini saya tampilkan sejenak bahwa untuk kelas batch pertama kami memberikan special launch price, yaitu bagi anggota IAI sebesar senilai 2,3 juta dari harga 2,5 juta. Sementara bagi non-IAI members dikenakan biaya 2,8 juta dari harga 3 juta rupiah. Dan ini sudah termasuk biaya pengambilan ujiannya. Jadi ini adalah bundling course and exam. Ya, jadi biaya yang cover adalah keseluruhan, baik itu mencakup materials tentu online, kemudian course-nya dan ujiannya itu sendiri. Dan ini mengikuti ketentuan dari ACCA tentunya ya. Untuk material, semua materialnya sebenarnya udah online juga ya, dan bisa diakses kurang lebih selama 6 bulan, sehingga Bapak Ibu tetap bisa memanfaatkan lebih optimal lagi. Sementara untuk kelas persiapannya sendiri berlangsung periodenya kurang lebih dalam jangka waktu 3 minggu ya, kurang lebih 3 minggu, di mana tiap minggu ada 2 pertemuan untuk melakukan diskusi atau secara interaktif dengan instruktur untuk membahas materi, topik maupun persiapan dan latihan dan mock exam. Jika Bapak Ibu ingin mendaftarkan diri, ada linknya di situ, silakan klik link yang ada, atau jika ingin diskusi, ingin ada beberapa pertanyaan yang ingin klarifikasi, silakan mengajukan email ke registrasi@iai-global.org.id, atau boleh WA ke nomor WA IAI, yaitu 08 111 055 141 ya, 08 111 055 141. Baik, itu mungkin sekilas yang bisa saya sampaikan. Sekali lagi terima kasih Bapak Ibu telah join pada acara co-branding launching, grand launching ya, co-branding IAI-ACCA untuk CertDA course and exam. Semoga acara hari ini bermanfaat buat Bapak Ibu. Jadi Mr. Suresh sudah menjelaskan banyak sekali hal. Semoga ada ketertarikan Bapak Ibu untuk lebih mendalami lagi mengenai data analytics. Dan kita nanti kalau ada pertanyaan, we are more than happy to answer your questions. Mungkin itu, silakan Monik untuk dilanjutkan acara kita.
Terima kasih Pak Edward Tanujaya for explaining the CertDA preparation course and examination to us. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, I would like to remind you to join our survey. The survey is also part of the attendance list, and you are required to fill the right keyword to get the e-certificate. You may revisit the link at the latest at 6 p.m. Jakarta time. Please listen to the right keyword that I will mention right now. The right keyword is data analytics. One more time, the right keyword is data analytics. Okay, now thank you very much for raising the question. And I would like to invite Ibu Hani Karunia to lead the Q&A session that already raised by the participant. To Ibu Hani, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mbak Monica, and also thank you, Pak Edu, earlier, and also Suresh, Ms. Dames, and also Mr. Raymond Jack, Pak Is, for all your participation and contribution today. So since in this Q&A, actually we're going to use Bahasa, so pardon that for the participants that are non-English speakers, we will continue this session in Bahasa, okay? Dan juga untuk menghormati bulan Ramadan, memang kita sekarang kan plannya sampai jam 5, so mohon maaf bila ini ada keterlambatan ya. Jadi mungkin kita untuk menghormati juga ya sudah memberikan pertanyaan, kita akan tetap melanjutkan tapi dengan memberikan 10 menit ekstra ya. Oke, untuk pertanyaan pertama nih dari Ibu Yuliawati Chen. Nah, dalam Q&A ini nanti saya akan juga berikan ke beberapa participants ataupun panelis ya yang mungkin kredibel untuk menjawab. Untuk pertanyaan dari Ibu Yuliawati Chen, pertanyaannya adalah untuk learning prosesnya, apakah nanti termasuk pengolahan data menggunakan sistem apa? Mungkin sebelum saya juga mungkin memberi komen, Pak Edu, do you have any answer on this?
Ya, Bu Hani, mungkin terkait dengan silabus juga ya nantinya ya. Ini sekarang kita lagi finalisasi silabusnya dan related to the CertDA exams. Tapi menurut pengalaman kami sih yang akan dibahas terkait dengan seputar 365, sorry. Nah, 365 itu ada Excel di situ ya, it's quite powerful tools, juga Power BI ya, kita juga akan bahas sekilas mengenai Power BI tersebut. Jadi at least those two tools ya yang quite popular itu kita akan cover juga di course yang akan ditawarkan oleh IAI. Mungkin itu Bu Ani.
Oke. Terima kasih. Dan mungkin kalau dari saya ingin menambahkan di kontennya sendiri, course yang dari ACCA itu ada beberapa PDF file yang memang semacam pembelajaran ya, self study juga, memberikan guidance, tapi memang dalam bahasa Inggris untuk beberapa processing sistem tersebut ya, bahkan termasuk ada untuk Python juga. Oke, selanjutnya nih pertanyaannya adalah I'm a senior accountant from Sandy Oktasari. I'm a senior accountant in Singapore, not a member of IAI, but a member of ACCA. Can I join CertDA IAI? Okay, Pak Edu, I'm sure you.
Yeah, I think you can. Of course, you are more than welcome to join ya, Bu Sandy ya. Even you based in Singapore. Tapi kan kelasnya juga secara online ya, jadi bisa diakses saya kira dengan mudah. Of course, ini kelasnya dalam bahasa Indonesia juga, jadi mungkin lebih familiar ya untuk penjelasan. Memang exam-nya kan dalam bahasa Inggris nantinya saja, tapi mungkin untuk online class course-nya sih, I think you can access it anywhere ya, di Singapore atau yang di Istanbul atau dimanapun, ya more than welcome to join. Itu Bu Ani.
Iya. Oke, I think that's give a perfect answer. Terima kasih Pak Edu. Berikutnya ada komen atau berupa pertanyaan dari Ani Suryani. She was just expressing her statement, I think, looking forward the information of the certification cost. I think Pak Edu already explained that earlier in his session ya Pak ya.
Yeah.
And also, I'm just wondering whether all the participants will get the copy or share the PDF or presentation file Pak later on.
Ya, today materi hari ini yang kita share ya Bu ya. Jadi saya ulangi lagi, memang untuk anggota, untuk launching yang pertama ini ada harga khusus, jadi untuk anggota IAI 2,3 juta, non anggota 2,8 juta, dan itu include sampai exam yang pertama ya Bu ya. Exam yang pertama loh, nggak ngulang ya. Kalau ngulang beda lagi isinya Bu ya.
Iya betul. Oke, terima kasih Pak Edu. Oke, now the next question. Oke, I think ini dari Pak Nugroho ya. Ini lebih related with the course. So, what if one failed one or few subjects on the test? Can that person retake the test within the 6 months period of it, or it has to be taken outside the 6 months period? Any additional investment required? I think I'd like to answer this. For
Ya,
the
Bu
test,
Ani, silakan.
yeah, for the test, you can actually have 3 tries or 3 tryout ya. Jadi nanti Anda bisa mendapatkan 3 kali percobaan untuk bisa lulus dalam waktu 6 bulan tersebut. Berarti itu tidak perlu bayar lagi ya. There is no additional investment required. But of course, nanti kalau dalam waktu 6 bulan ternyata juga 3 kali tryout itu tidak cukup ya. Tadi unfortunately you have to repeat, but I think with the course yang dari IAI tadi itu akan sangat membantu ya Pak ya untuk pemahaman.
Malah 3 kali ya boleh ngambil ya Bu ya. So you have 3 kali atau 3 opportunity gitu ya untuk mengambil ujiannya. Wah, ini harusnya chance-nya lebih besar lagi untuk lulus.
Iya.
Setelah ikut course-nya IAI jadi lebih mantap. Oke Bu.
Benar.
Great.
Alright, so mungkin kembali untuk beberapa pertanyaan yang memang related with the CertDA trainingnya. Ini dari Maria Maslim. Sore, apakah ada silabusnya? Lalu apakah ada pelajaran menggunakan SQL, R, atau Python untuk pengolahan data? Ini agak similar dengan sebelumnya nih Pak, tapi mungkin bisa dijelaskan kembali.
Jadi mungkin silabus detailnya kami sedang dalam proses pengembangan ya, Bu Maria. Tapi kami pasti akan mirroring lah dengan topik-topik yang sudah ada di CertDA. Jadi nanti pun kalau memang misalnya SQL atau Python ini juga ada di CertDA materials, tentu kita akan cover ya. Tapi sejauh pemahaman saya yang kemarin di cover itu lebih banyak di Excel dan Power BI sih. Tapi let take note, ini nanti kita akan cek ke instruktur kami yang saat ini sedang dalam finalisasi sebenarnya untuk silabusnya. Itu Bu Ani.
Ya, saya juga mau menambahkan tadi di course-nya ACCA sendiri itu yang online ya, yang bukan yang preparation course, itu ada beberapa materi yang bisa di-download untuk pemahaman Python malah sebenarnya. Jadi ada juga sedikit tentang SQL. Itu sebatas support untuk pemahaman beberapa case study-nya sih, tapi lumayan bermanfaat juga sih saya ya. Oke, selanjutnya nih dari Pak Hendy. Hi, I wonder if the certificate will provide any title to use on our name. Oke, mungkin saya mau jawab kalau ada Pak Edu mau menambahkan boleh. Kalau untuk dari ACCA sendiri ya Pak, biasanya kan yang diatur itu dari pusat atau yang UK itu hanya pemakaian untuk title ACCA, lalu ada FCCA dan juga CAT. Nah, kalau untuk di luar dari itu biasanya kita berikan kembali kepada market. Kadang kan market juga ada semacam legal body ataupun kayak semacam regulator gitu ya Pak ya. Jadi kita balikan kembali kalau memang itu diperbolehkan. Kalau misalkan tidak ada, biasanya sih you're more than welcome ya to use that ya. Bagaimana menurut Pak Edu? Apa ada komen?
Ya, memang tidak ada ini ya khusus ya untuk bagaimana penggunaan namanya, tapi saya rasa Bapak Ibu more than happy ya kalau bisa dicantumkan lah ya di dalam CV Bapak Ibu bahwa you have taken ya CertDA exam ini. Itu tambahan.
Oke, nah ini satu pertanyaan terakhir ya, Miss Monica, because we still have one more minute. So, sini dari Teguh Aldeva. To IAI, I saw on the IAI web that this course held on weekdays, Tuesday and Thursdays in June. Is there any other day provided by IAI for this certification? Maybe on weekend, because to be honest, I want to take this certification. But at the same time, I'm doing my master study, which my study take on 6:30 to 9:30. Jadi kira-kira mau akan ada kelas weekendnya?
Oke, jadi terima kasih Bu Hani, terima kasih Pak Teguh atas pertanyaannya. Jadi memang untuk pertama ini kita memang baru launching Juni itu ya, tanggal 3 Juni hari Selasa dan Kamis. Tapi nanti di kuesioner Bapak Ibu silakan ditambahkan jika ingin ngambil di bulan-bulan lain, kita open sih opportunity untuk justru di weekend. Jadi memang kita ada rencana untuk bikin di weekend. Tapi ya, semoga ini ya partisipan juga cukup banyak. Mungkin next batch ya, batch kedua kita akan coba buat kelas di weekend. Weekend berarti Sabtu dan Minggu. Dan biasanya kami dengan di pagi hari gitu ya, Bapak Ibu. Jadi dia lebih fresh. Dan saya sekalian nambah deh, ini pesertanya siapa aja yang boleh. Jadi anggota IAI dapat free khusus gitu ya, ada khusus, ada anggota. Tapi nggak ada requirement latar belakang ya. Jadi mau masih mahasiswa juga boleh loh kalau mau ngambil ya. Dan kalau mahasiswa dan anggota muda itu dapat harga anggota IAI. Jadi mau mahasiswa, baru fresh graduate malah bagus juga ya kalau mau ngambil. Jadi it's open certification.
Ya, sepertinya banyak nih pertanyaan yang mengarah ke situ. Mungkin mereka ingin memastikan kalau memang harus member IAI ataupun ACCA, apakah public ataupun yang non member bisa ikut ya Pak. Jadi terima kasih sudah kasih that summary. Oke, so I think terima kasih semuanya. Waktunya sudah up dan terima kasih sudah menghadiri acara kami pada sore ini. Selamat buka nanti dan back to you Miss Monica. Terima kasih. Thank you Pak.
Terima kasih.
Thank you very much, Ibu Hani and Bapak Edward Tanujaya for answering all those questions raised by all the participants. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at the end of the webinar session. On behalf of IAI and ACCA, we would like to deliver our sincere gratitude to the speaker, Mr. Surasud, and all of the participants. Thank you for joining us. This is certainly a ngabuburit session for all of us. Should you have more question about this program, please do not hesitate to reach us via WhatsApp or social media or email. One more time, I would like to remind you on the survey link. This link is only available until 6 p.m. Jakarta time. So just please visit the link directly, and we also have upload the material you could download directly on the link provided. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Monica Nabilia. Please stay safe and stay healthy. Happy Iftar, and I hope to see you again in another lovely event. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you everyone. Thank you Bu Hani. Thank you Mr. Suresh.
Thank you Ibu Hani. Thank you Mr.
Thank
Suresh.
you. Bye,
Bye everyone.
Take care.
Mbak Monica. Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Gabung Brevet Pajak IAI, pilihan tepat untuk Anda. Pelatihan Brevet IAI, ahli pajak, bedah substansi, temukan solusi. Kenapa memilih IAI? Modul yang selalu update dan materi yang dilengkapi dengan pembahasan studi kasus komprehensif. Instruktur yang terjaga kompetensinya, berpengalaman, dan tentu saja profesional. Apa aja yang didapat kalau belajar pajak? Sudah pasti, kita jadi tahu seluk-beluk perhitungan pajak. Menjadi kuasa hukum perpajakan mewakili perusahaan, meningkatkan karir dan menunjang profesi. Kalau ingin menjadi konsultan pajak, belajar brevet pajak juga bisa sebagai langkah persiapan USKP. So, banyak kan manfaat belajar brevet pajak? Sebagai benefit tambahan, IAI melaksanakan program kuliah umum perpajakan dengan menghadirkan narasumber dari praktisi dan profesional di bidang perpajakan. IAI juga melaksanakan gathering alumni brevet untuk senantiasa mengupdate informasi perpajakan. Kalian juga tidak perlu bingung, karena IAI menyiapkan berbagai pilihan waktu belajar, jadi dapat disesuaikan dengan kebutuhan. Bagi teman-teman mahasiswa, IAI juga memberikan harga khusus mahasiswa aktif. Selama pandemi, IAI juga tetap hadir dalam pelatihan brevet pajak secara virtual dengan menggunakan platform Microsoft Teams. Hal ini juga memungkinkan untuk dapat diikuti oleh peserta dari seluruh Indonesia. Dan, untuk diketahui, pelatihan brevet pajak terapan IAI juga diperkuat dengan MOU antara IAI dan Direktorat Jenderal Pajak. IAI juga memiliki kompartemen akuntan perpajakan. Yang salah satu kegiatan rutinnya adalah menyelenggarakan regular tax discussion yang mengupas isu perpajakan terkini. Brevet IAI hadir di 6 Knowledge Center di Jabodetabek, IAI Knowledge Center Menteng, Moy, Serpong, Kedoya, Fatmawati, dan Sumarekon Bekasi. Selain itu, dengan standarisasi nasional, pelatihan Brevet IAI juga hadir di beberapa IAI wilayah di Indonesia. Nah, jadi tunggu apa lagi? Ayo segera daftar pelatihan Brevet Pajak Terapan IAI. Pelatihan Brevet IAI, ahli pajak, bedah substansi, temukan solusi.
Nama saya Adisti Kinantibaga, panggilan saya Adisti. Saya berusia 22 tahun. Saya saat ini bekerja sebagai staf accounting di PT Prima Perkasa Global Indo. Saya mengambil kualifikasi ACCA pada saat saya berkuliah semester 5 untuk program Diploma in Accounting and Business. Menurut saya, sertifikat ACCA sangat membantu saya dalam mencari kerja setelah saya lulus, karena saya sekali interview, besoknya saya diekspektasi masuk kerja, sedangkan kandidat lain harus tes berikutnya.
My name is Natalia Halim. My friends call me Natalia. I'm 22 years old, and I'm currently working as a finance graduate trainee in PT HM Sampurna Tbk. So right now I'm working in the group accounting department. More specifically, I'm working now in investors relations. So basically what we do is that we provide informations to investors and to analysts regarding our financial performance. I have an advanced diploma in accounting and business from ACCA, and now I'm pursuing my bachelor's degree from Oxford Brookes University. ACCA qualification has helped me learn a broad range of knowledge, because in my role now, I'm expected to understand the financial numbers, but also at the same time relating it to the business situation right now. So these numbers have to tell a story regarding what's happening in the business. In 5 years, I would expect to have my bachelor's degree from Oxford Brookes University, and at the same time continuing the P papers. And in terms of work, I would expect to be in a more senior position in the company that I'm working at.
Hi, my name is Risunandi Muhammad, but usually people call me Nandi. I am currently 28 years old and now working in BP or British Petroleum Indonesia as finance project advisor. Now I'm doing my ACCA studies in strategic professional papers. So I take ACCA qualification for at least 2 reasons. First is because it opened my career opportunities outside Indonesia. And then the second one is because it teaches a more relevant curriculum for the new Industrial Revolution 4.0, which RPA, robotic process automation, and artificial intelligence will take many parts of our job. ACCA helps me progress through my career because now in my working place as multinational company, it is a requirement to have international certification to apply to a global vacant role. And now it's happened recently when I got promoted to be a finance advisor to Aberdeen and US. So it is because I put ACCA in my CV. My message for the ACCA young students are, first, is to always have a little extra for being an extraordinary. And for that, taking that little extra is by taking the ACCA to progress throughout your global careers. And then the second one is always to have a little extra to allocate your time every day. So by consistently allocating your time, it will be making us easier to pass ACCA examination.
My name is Alicia Yohananda Swastika. People call me Alicia or Al. I am 21 years old and I have been in the ACCA affiliate for a year now. I currently work at a pharmaceutical company that manufactures betadine products. It's called Mahakam Beta Pharma. In my role, I handle a lot of activities actually. So they deal with lots of material price analysis and monitoring discounts as well, and also I help a lot in efficiencies and improvements in the manufacturing side of the company. In 5 years, I see myself in a more senior position, ideally in a consulting or advisory role, and perhaps in a different country, because I acknowledge that ACCA has global recognition, so I could definitely work in a different country. I choose consulting or advisory because I enjoy evaluating and analyzing business processes and their internal structure, and trying to come up with ways on how to make them more efficient. I would very much enjoy helping companies by providing professional advice to help them become better in what they do.
Selamat sore Bapak Ibu. Terima kasih atas partisipasinya. Ruangan ini akan kita tutup dalam 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.